Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
What's up, everybody? This is your co-host, Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average podcast-producing badass.
I'm John Thomas. Some would say that I go a little too far with my love of all things horror, paranormal, and meta, but I say, talk nerdy to me, and I'm all yours.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and all of our extraterrestrial pals out there? In today's episode, we're bringing back Galactic Ambassador Dr. Lisa J. Thompson from Season 3. She's joining us to discuss her recent participation in DisclosureFest, Stairway to the Stars in Las Vegas, as well as topics such as quantum cosmic energy healing and her new book. So sit back, relax, and let's head into the cosmos.
But first, a word from our network sponsor.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more. Jingle, jingle, jingle. All right, bring us back, John.
Welcome back, everybody, and welcome back to the show. Lisa, it's good to have you back.
It's great to be here with you guys again. It's been a whole year.
I know. What are the odds that just, a year later, because when I reached out to you, it was about that year mark, where it's just like, I'd really love to have you back on. Are you available?
Yes, and so much has happened in the last year. So, yeah.
I believe it. So I know originally what spoke to me when I reached out to you was I saw your posts about DisclosureFest, Stairway to the Stars, and it looked fantastic. Like, that looked like a really amazing event. Can you tell us what that is?
Okay, yeah, I would love
We're
to.
jumping in.
Because it was actually the first UFO conference that I have been to, and so the first of many. It was jam-packed with just so many amazing speakers, like on every kind of UFO UAP topic that you can imagine. So anything from like the technology side of things to people channeling the different AT groups. And so, and amazing vendors. And what I was really drawn to, because you had to really pick and choose, what you were going to do and what you were going to be a part of. And so for me, now that I have been channeling a lot more over the last year, because my new book, it's 13 different galactic races that I've channeled now. And so, yeah, so I made some amazing connections with other channelers that there are going to be future collaborations. I even met a Bigfoot guy who wants to collaborate potentially. I met the voice of Ancient Aliens, which was super exciting because he did the voice in my ear for me.
That has to be awesome.
Yeah, it was interesting because his normal voice, I'm like, really? You're the narrator? And then when he did it in my ear, kind of softly, and I mean, it was just so cool. So
the tingles.
Yeah. So for me, it was massive networking. That's what I really like, feeling like I'm part of a true family, like a tribe, a soul tribe of galactics.
I don't even know where to start. So many questions popped up. I love it. That's exciting. I love that there is a place, because back in the day, it's no secret that it's been very taboo to talk about that kind of stuff, and more it's becoming normalized. So I love that now there's like a convention for that, and there's a place to feel like there is a community and a support network even more. How many days was this?
So it was a 3-day event, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I also participated in the Area 51 night Skywatch because I wanted to compare it to my Big Island UFO tours just to see, what the difference was.
How did it compare?
Oh, well, okay. Number one, I think the bus drivers got lost because it was only supposed to take us 2 hours to drive there, and it took us 4. So we got there really late and we were really hungry, and it was 20 degrees out in the middle of the desert in Rachel, Nevada. And so by the time we got there, I, I took my own set of goggles because they only had 7 pair of goggles to share among 200 people. So that part wasn't good for the other people. But when I was looking through the goggles, it was interesting because there was not the same kind of activity that we have here in Hawaii. And there are a couple of things that I would need to go back and compare. Number one is that we see a lot of sightings right after sunset, and it's because a lot of the craft are metallic. So just like satellites that are metallic, the sun is still reflecting off of that metallic surface within the first couple hours after sunset. And so any of the really blinking ones or that have lights would be visible, throughout the entire night. But if it's just metallic, then it wouldn't be visible by the time we got there, which was around 11 p.m. at night that finally got the goggles out. So it was really hard to compare. But it definitely wasn't as much activity. But I also was in Peru earlier this year and was looking at the night sky, with the goggles. And Peru is so active with UFOs. And so I was expecting, again, it to be like Hawaii. It was not. I was shocked. Now they were showing up in our photos during the day.
Peru?
We couldn't see them with our eyes, but all the photos just kept like phasing in and saying, doing little photo bombs or something. And so it's really interesting because here in Hawaii, when I first moved here, they said that the veil is thinner between dimensions. And now I'm starting to compare and contrast, and I'm experiencing that a little bit.
Why do you suppose that is?
We have so much energy here. And I don't know if, we're completely remote. We're in the middle of the Pacific, one of the most remote places on Earth. But with the volcanic energy that we have, I don't know. There's just something special about the island.
I mean, the energy feels different there. I've recently, it was 2 years ago, 2 Christmases ago, I went to Hawaii and I went in blank slate. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what, but you get there and it's like, oh, there is something different. And the more remote you get on the islands, I did the road to Hana, and the more remote you get back in there, it feels different. There is a different vibration that goes on.
Yeah. And we, there's a lot of like vortex energy, kind of like Sedona. And Sedona has crazy UFO activity. And that's where, I very first got to experience using night vision goggles 5.5 years ago. And so we have similar energy, similar portals, vortexes, things like that, maybe just Area 51, Rachel, Nevada isn't that kind of area. It's more of the reverse engineered kind of craft, right? That doesn't have that otherworldly feeling to it.
That makes sense. Now, was Peru where you had the retreat?
No, I was with a group, but I was doing kind of like an ancient alien tour of Peru, and so much fun. Peru is absolutely amazing. The people are amazing. And, but I did host a galactic retreat here in Hawaii 2 months ago.
Yeah, the algorithm, I get like random bursts of like your feed. And so I see pictures come from different events going on, and it's like, ooh, remind me to ask her about that. Oh, let me follow up on that. Because I do remember the pictures you posted with, I believe it was the women in the retreat with the really amazing headdresses and stuff. And there was a UFO in the background of one of them.
Yes.
And that was really cool. That was neat.
Yeah. And so that's the kind of photo bombing that they're doing a lot this year, and where, people aren't visibly seeing them with their eyes, but they are popping into the photos. It's like they're barely phasing in into a dimension where the camera can pick it up, but our visible eyes can't. And now, of course, there are lots of visible sightings too. And I can't wait to tell you about the one in March that I
We have so many. Now, I am curious on the retreat, or I'm sorry, the conference. You said there were a lot of amazing vendors. What kind of vendors do you see at a conference like this?
So a lot of book authors. There were also crystal vendors, people doing different kinds of readings, like starseed readings or psychic readings, mediumship. People had different like sound kind of things that they were selling, tuning forks, and
Okay.
some people were selling their own retreats. And there are other conferences that are going to be happening. There's an Ascension conference in Sedona that's a lot of the UFO speakers. That's going to be in March that I'm going to be vending at. I've already decided. And I might be one of their speakers next fall too.
I feel
So,
like this is something we should go to, John.
Road trip. Yep, absolutely. I want to go back
Yeah.
to Sedona.
John
anyway.
knows how much I love
Oh,
Sedona,
my
so
goodness, yeah. Yes.
okay, yeah, come to Sedona, March 8th to the 10th.
Oh, hell yeah.
And
write it down, Jonathan.
so, and then one of the channeling booths that was there. So there are these 3 channels that work together. They actually teamed up. They channel different entities. And so they had a booth where first ever crystal mantis skulls. So my new friend Tony, he channels mantis, and he commissioned 2 different artists to create these mantis crystal skulls for him to sell at the show. And
That's so cool.
I know, I'm like, oh my God, I've never seen this before. He's like, I know, it doesn't exist. That's why I wanted to create them.
Did you get one?
I got 2.
I love it.
Yeah. Mantis, they're one of the groups that I am very connected to. And so, yeah, I have a whole collection of, ET crystal skulls, and anything unusual like that I had to get.
I love that you collect that, because I feel like I've got my own collection of things where people are just like, what is that? And I'm like, don't worry about it. This is my thing. So you said in the past year, since then, you have channeled 13, right?
Yes. And so, yeah, last year when we talked, I had just come out with my book, Connection to the Cosmos.
Mm-hmm.
And I had started channeling Arcturians. And so at the beginning of this year, they were like, okay, I know you like us, but you are bringing in other groups as well. All the groups, they want me to be a bridge for humans to understand them in not a fear-based way. Because, like one of the groups that came through were reptilians, which, so some people have an immediate reaction.
A lot of fear association.
Yeah, a lot of fear. And that's one of the things they wanted to address, because just like with Greys, there are so many different types of reptilians that come from different star systems, that live in different dimensions. And so you can't put them all in one category of being negative. The majority of them are highly advanced, highly evolved, and just pure love. So that's why I'm like, yes, I want to help change that narrative that people have.
Yeah, and I know part of the narrative that tends to be around with like conspiracy theories is that reptilians live amongst us and they're up to no good, and they hide under the guise of, regular or not regular, standard humans. And so is that even a thing, or are they existing, like you said, in other dimensions elsewhere?
Well, so I definitely know there are some reptilians that live in inner Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And there are different groups that live inside inner Earth. And so one of the reptilian groups, again, they're highly advanced, highly evolved, and there's absolutely nothing to be afraid of because they understand that unity consciousness. Now, are there nefarious ones? There might be. I'm not going to say that there aren't. And I'm not going to say like adamantly, no, they don't live among us, because I've met people that have experienced seeing the eyes change, or, a little bit of shape shifting going on. And what I want to say to that, though, from a spiritual perspective, is that we personally don't experience anything that we are not resonating at the same frequency with. And so you have very low vibe humans, right? And you have very high vibe humans. And so whatever vibe, whatever frequency we are vibrating at, that can be the only thing that comes into our world. And nothing is done to us against our will. Everything is a soul level contract agreement, from my understanding.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, there's nefarious anything. Like humans aren't all 100% kumbaya love. There's a gradient. So
Yeah, that's one of the things that I actually talk about a lot, especially on my tours with people who aren't very familiar with this. So anything residing in that third, fourth dimensional reality, like we are as humans, experiences polarity. And so as polarized beings, we do experience good, bad, positive, negative, etc. But that is simply a mechanism of evolution. And so when, the things that in my life that I could label as bad or negative actually propelled me to transform and move out of that situation and gain wisdom from it. And so even though sometimes it can feel yucky at that human ego level, from a higher perspective, there really is no polarity when you get to the higher levels.
now with the different races that your races, what would you categorize
I,
that?
I call them races.
Okay, with the different races that you are channeling and sending or receiving messages through, do you find that there is a common message that they're trying to get through to us on top of the, hey, don't be so afraid of us? Like, don't be boneheaded humans.
Well, yes, for sure. They, because the ones at least that I am channeling and working with, they're all in at least fifth dimension and higher. And at that fifth dimensional level, there really is more of that unity consciousness. They understand love is the basis of everything. And again, polarity doesn't exist anymore. So there's no more judgment. And so they really want us as humanity to get over our judgment, first of all, for ourselves. And when we do that, then we can stop judging other people for things that we may not particularly like or want to experience ourselves. But that doesn't mean that for them that it's wrong or that they shouldn't believe something or do something, because we are all here to play this game of Earth life. And I had a QHHT session late last year where I really, like at the core of my being, got to experience that this really is just a game that we are playing. We get to choose how we want to play the game. And so some of the other messages that come through the groups, specifically the Arcturians really want to hammer this in, is that at the quantum level, all timelines exist simultaneously. And so all timelines for this current reality of Earth, they are existing and we can timeline jump. And so this is something that we do all the time without realizing that we're doing, just by making choices and by being in certain energy. And so we have all of these parallel Earths existing where those who are focusing on, the really negative stuff, the media, the wars, the religions, like all the fighting going on in the world, those people are seeing, Earth through a very different lens than people who are operating from a place of joy, following their passion, really not judging other people and their actions, even if it seems from our ego perspective, bad. But those of us that are staying in more of that high vibration, we have a whole different Earth reality. And that's how we're shifting to fifth dimension. Ultimately, Mother Gaia, she's already shifted and we are coming along with her or not. Some people are choosing to check out. Some people are just choosing to stay in that other reality of the polarization. And there is no right timing on it, all of this. It's just some of us are ready to help usher in that fifth dimensional reality, and others just keep wanting to play the third dimensional reality. And it's all right.
Now, I've been wondering about that because you brought it up with like the war and stuff. I've been kind of in my head trying to cycle through for those that are in that, like they are living in that terror, they're living in that war zone and in those moments, having that high vibration seems like not as feasible. So I'm curious, like how that affects the people that are in that moment. How can the messages get through, and how can that higher vibration be received in that constraint, if that makes sense?
No, it totally does. And I mean, it's a really good question, I think, from a spiritual perspective, because again, everything that happens to us here on earth, we sign up for before we come into this life. And so, even some of the most horrific things that someone might experience, whether it's murder or war or famine or whatever, it's simply just one costume that these people are wearing to experience in this life. It isn't really who they are. And they might be experiencing the flip side of what they were in a different life. And so, for someone that's really in it, there are always choices that can be made, as hard as it is. So removing yourself from a location, if that is possible, or doing whatever you can internally to create the environment, and knowing that the more that you can hold that energy within yourself, because ultimately we are in control of our own environment, which creates our reality, then when we are able to really stay in our own energy field, then the outside stuff doesn't affect us in the same way. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not going to affect maybe our neighbors or our family members, but it doesn't affect us directly. And the more that people can have that inner peace, that inner calm, no matter what chaos is going on around, that then spreads out through this earth. That energy vibration spreads out, and they become the light. They become the ones who people are like, wow, okay, maybe I can live like that. And so really it starts with self always first.
No, you're completely right. I think about people that, you know, tend to be the most like energetically stable, like the hardest to shake, the hardest to, get unsteady, tend to be the ones that have gone through the most because it took a lot more for them to be able to find that inner peace
Yeah,
than someone who's like got the perfect scenario, loosely speaking, to be able to explore self. Like you're absolutely
right.
right.
Yeah. And, myself, now I haven't been in war, and I haven't, but I, at least from an American perspective, I have gone through some of the most hard lessons that someone can experience in this earth life. And recently too, the hardest one, but all of the proof that I have for myself is that I came out from the ashes, rising even greater and transforming even greater from that hardship. And so, when you have other people that have gone through it, then you can look to them and be like, okay, there is something else, a different way. You don't have to be stuck. Being stuck is a choice.
Yeah, I think having others who can relate. Obviously, we don't want people to go through things that hurt us and, rip us apart, but having other people that have gone through it, it is almost a mirror, but not, because it's a lens to say they got through it. I can too. There
Mhm.
is a way. There is a way to heal. There is a way to keep going.
Yeah. And that healing, again, the more that people do the inner work on themselves, then they are going to have that stability, again, no matter what chaos is going on around. because we all have the ability to transcend to a greater reality. We get to choose what timeline we want to be a part of. And most people are very, I would say, unconscious in how they're living their life. And, for the last 3 years that I've lived here in Hawaii, I'm human, right? I have stuff that comes up all the time, but I am doing my best to create that inner environment and really do what these ETs are giving advice on. And my life is pretty amazing. Even though some really horrible stuff has happened recently, my life still really is amazing. I'm very grateful for the people and the things that I have in my life, the opportunities.
I mean, I think it's amazing. When we spoke a year ago, you were channeling a few races and now you're at 13, and who knows where you're going to be a year from now. And I know there are people out there that are like, "Oh my gosh, I want to see an alien. I want to talk to an alien. And they want it so badly." And yet you're able to channel these. And how do you suppose you're able to be a conduit for that? Is there something you think is specific to you, or is it just the path that you're on? That was a really weird way to ask that question.
Okay, well, I get where you're going with that. And
Thank you.
yeah, well, being that I grew up in a spiritual school that was channeled first and foremost, I never thought I would be a channeler, just because, there was such a stigma to it in my town. And so it actually, when they were like, "We want to channel through you," and I'm like, "Oh, really? No." So I fought it for a long time. And so then finally, when I was able to relax into it, and I did take a channeling class with my friend Kira, who channels Kuan Yin for the last 20 years. And so really opening up that vocal channel, then once I knew what the energy was coming through me, when the Arcturians were like, "Hey, now we're going to bring in other groups," I knew who I was as an Arcturian. Like, I knew that I was just channeling myself from that realm. And then I had this aha moment, like, all these other groups that they're telling me to work with, I have lives as those beings. So they are simply an aspect of myself. And so with all the work that I do with parallel lives and, regression work and all of that, knowing that it's just simply me, I could then tune into that frequency very easily and let it come through. There was nothing to be afraid of. Even again, with like a reptilian or a Zeta coming through, because it's just me. And I think that the more that people realize that they have these aspects of themselves, because we're all multidimensional beings, that communication opens up even greater.
No, that makes so much more sense. Because it's like, versus creating a bridge to something external to you, it's more so, hey, focus on your finger. That's an extension of you. You can feel that. You can focus on that, and you can then feel that, right? And so I think that's really cool. That's really neat.
Yeah. And so when I'm helping people to meet their galactic family or guides, some of them really get right away, okay, oh, that's my family. But some of them are like, oh, wow, that is an aspect of me. So they really get it, because we're all connected, right? We are all one with each other. And we forget that because we're so separate here on Earth. But the more that you move up into those higher realms, they become collectives, and then they become higher collectives. And then ultimately everything is connected to source. And so we have access. Every person has access to things that are more than just this human life.
So I know you mentioned that you help with quantum healing, and I believe you mentioned, was it QHT?
So I did a QHHT session last year. Like, I participated. So the modality that I have now created, that it's actually at the I'm waiting to get my official service mark, hopefully a few more months and I'll have it. But I've named it Quantum Cosmic Energy Healing. And what it is, it's a combination of regression therapy, so some hypnosis, along with sound healing, with bringing in the channeling and the light language from the Arcturian realm, working with the Arcturian, Syrians, and Mantis beings. And with that, really, it is meant to clear emotional trauma that is stuck in the body. So when we don't clear our emotions, what happens is that it can create mental illness, but it can also create physical illness in the body. And so really, there are different ways, so many different modalities out there that can do a similar thing. I just happen to, use that Arcturian energy, that now I know that that is my role as an Arcturian, is to bring in that emotional healing truly. And once we heal the emotions, we change our timelines, we rewire the brain, it propagates out through our ancestral bloodlines, past and future. And so really at the quantum level, everything shifts.
What's interesting, and actually I would love your perspective on this, because this has come up on a few episodes this season, is this idea that for a lot of us, we are trying to communicate with extraterrestrials on a level that we are used to communicating here. So like 3D, person to person. And
Right.
there was this idea that came up that maybe when we are in sleep paralysis or in a sleep state, that's where we're actually connecting to, or able to connect to extraterrestrials, because we're looking on the wrong dimension. We're using the wrong communication level.
Yeah.
What's your insight on that?
I totally agree with that. Like the way that scientists, like mainstream scientists, are trying to find proof of ET life out there, it's like taking a little tablespoon of water in the ocean and being like, okay, that's our test method. And it's so primitive, I think, compared to what these beings really are. And so, yeah, the physical experience of an ET can only happen if that ET is a third, fourth dimensional being like us, or fifth dimensional beings can actually lower their vibration to densify for a short time into our reality to be experienced physically. However, they don't like doing that. It's really hard. It's like molasses here. And so the higher dimensional ones, when we automatically go into alpha state, which is daydream, we go into theta state, just before sleep, and then delta, we are in a higher vibration. And that is where most of the experiences happen. And so even if a craft were to land next to someone, the energy is so high that it would likely knock them out and put them into theta or delta state. And so they wouldn't really get to have that physical interaction that they are seeking. Now, what's interesting though is that, back to the UFO conference. So I went to see Bashar. And so Bashar is a channeled Sasani who is a hybrid, essentially a Zeta human hybrid, who speaks through Daryl Anka for the last 38 years or so. And so Bashar has a timeline prediction that these hybrid children, these hybrids that have been created, are going to maybe be able to come and be among us Earth humans within maybe even the next 10 to 20 years. And so because they have so much of our DNA in them, they are a little more physical. Now they are slightly higher dimensional. They understand things from that higher spiritual perspective. So they're more of that fifth dimensional being. But those people who are shifting into fifth dimension permanently will be able to experience that faster. But as Earth humans, we are going from third, fourth to fifth all the time, back and forth, back and forth. And so it's just more about trying to maintain that fourth, fifth dimensional level more so. Hopefully that explains or answers your question a little bit.
It gave me more. So you mentioned they're hybrids, and they're human. What did you say? Hybrids?
They're human
Human
zeta.
Zeta.
So the zeta reticulum lie. Zetas are one specific group of grays, and they are the ones very commonly in the like abduction kind of scenarios. Now, and again, I don't like the word abduction. I think it automatically just goes negative. So I like Lisa Royal Holt's terminology of temporary detainment. But I, what's interesting. So I've had people on my podcast that have met some of their hybrid children, and I always had this like thought, like, I bet I have hybrid children. There's something. And I had a channeled session with Daniel Scranton, who is an amazing channeler. And that one of my questions was, do I have hybrid children? And they're like, yeah, you have 12 of these. And so I haven't met them yet, but at some point I will get to meet them. And so all of us that have these hybrid children, again, we agreed to it at a soul level. So even though people feel violated, like their sperm or their eggs are taken against their will, it actually is not. A lot of the humans that signed up for this program have a life as a Zeta. And so they're like, yeah, I'll come back as Earth human and be part of that program. And I know after working, Zetas and hybrids were the groups that came through me in these 13 different races. And so I know, like, for real, that I am part of that.
So where are they? That's my human basic processing.
Yeah. They don't have a home planet. They live in spaceships. And so oftentimes, especially again in the astral or dream state, Earth mothers are taken onto the craft to nurture these babies. Because one of the things that the Zetas, why we have this whole hybrid program to begin with, is the Zetas had bred out all emotions. They thought emotions were bad. But what it did was it turned them into being sterile, where they couldn't like have, natural birthing anymore. So they just had to clone themselves, and they realized their mistake. And so by creating this hybrid program, they're taking the best parts of, the human DNA, the best parts of the Zeta DNA, and creating this spiritually advanced race of hybrids that has emotions, but doesn't become like addicted and stuck in those emotions. And they need that nurturing. And I even just recently met a gentleman who he was taken onto a craft to nurture his hybrid children. So it's not just the women, men are being taken to do this as well.
Interesting. So would the aging process work the same for them, or how would that?
They can live a lot longer than we do. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, like I tried it. My head tries to wrap around. All of a sudden, the science of me is like, well, what do they eat? What do they wear? Just what's their tolerance to it? Just all the questions.
Well, yeah, and again, some people say that there are hybrids living here on Earth that have, already been kind of planted, and I believe that could be true as well. Some people really, they have the features of the hybrids, and they have extrasensory powers. Like their DNA is much more activated naturally, being born into this Earth existence.
It would explain jumps in a lot of different fields.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, I agree, and I definitely think there are some hybrids among us because I don't know. For me, I can just look at somebody and go, "That's not all human." Like there's something else. Like you just kind of know, you get a feeling, and it's just like, yeah. So I think they are definitely around us.
Energy. I feel like just the energy of certain people. You come across individuals, and you feel the energy, and it's like, you don't feel of this earth, and not in a scary way, but just like they feel ethereal and celestial, and I call them unicorns. Like you feel this energy of just doesn't feel like a standard person, and it's just like, I don't know what you are, but you're amazing.
Well, And there are a lot more of these, we'll call them ETs, but ETs choosing to be incarnated into Earth life that really maybe it's their first time here on Earth, maybe first or second, but they're being called because we are at such a precipice in our time of like this shift to fifth dimension. And so it's like all hands on deck here on Earth. So,
They're like, Earth needs some help. All hands on deck
yes,
there.
yes, exactly. Exactly.
So tell us about your book.
Okay. Well, so um, again, at the beginning of the year, I was told that I would be working with 13 groups total. And so they wanted me to create these galactic sessions where I would be pulling forth the energy and wisdom from these groups. I had all I knew. I just wrote down 13 names and I didn't know what this was going to be like. It was kind of an experiment where I just had to be open and trusting to what was going to come through. And so each of the sessions, that particular ET group just kind of took over and guided where the journey went and what they wanted to share. And so when I got through with those 13 sessions, I was like, this would be really good information to put in written form. Because some of my students that were in these sessions were like, can you write this down for us? And so I have the recorded classes. I've got just the meditation journeys that the ETs led. And then I have the written, book, The Wisdom of the Galactics, channeled messages to elevate your life. And so the book is really just from these sessions and really, again, to offer humanity hope that there is something, something greater than all of the nastiness just going on that some people are experiencing and have for the last 4 years and longer.
Where can people find your book?
So Amazon is probably the easiest place and the fastest. It's also on my 2 different websites, drlisajthompson.com and bigislandUFOtours.com. But, if you've got Prime, Amazon is way, way cheaper and faster.
Unless someone wants your book signed, do you do that?
I do. I do.
Because Amazon doesn't do that.
No, they don't. They don't. Do we have time for me to tell you about my March experience?
I was actually just about to ask you about that. I was like, now tell me about March. We absolutely have time.
Okay. No, because this was one of the most fun experiences and like validating experiences that I've been able to have, like with a physical craft that I can see. Okay. So on March 7th of this year, I was speaking we only have one bookstore on the entire island. And I was speaking at the bookstore. And so an audience, I'm answering questions about ETs, and the bookstore is about an hour away from my house. And so it was, nighttime driving home. The whole way home, I was just like really telepathic, like, guys, I just talked about you. I really want to see you. Show me a sign that you are here with me, please. And I mean, I do this before my tours too, but like, I'm like, please, I really, really want to experience you tonight. And so I was almost home. I was about a block away from my house. And all of a sudden I see this really bright light above the tree line. And I acknowledge it. I'm like, okay, I see you. Stay there. I'm going to go home and park. So I park, go to the end of my driveway, look across above my neighbor's house, above the tree line, and it was still there. So what it looked like was a very big, bright, pulsating star. And being a scientist, on my phone, I've got my constellation apps, my satellite apps. It wasn't moving, it was just kind of pulsating. And so very first thing I did was I checked to make sure it was not a star or a planet. And it was making no noise. And so there was nothing that was there. And so then I'm like, okay, I know you're a spacecraft. Please do something for me that only a spacecraft can do that a star can't. And so, it was pulsing, and what it did was it completely dimmed out where I couldn't see it anymore. And then a few seconds later, it came back on full brightness. And I got really excited. I'm like, do it again, do it again. and so it did it again. It completely dimmed out and it came back on full brightness. And I'm like, again, validation, do it again, please do it again. And it did it again. It did it 5 times for me because I needed the validation. I didn't want to think my eyes are playing tricks on me. There were no clouds in the sky. And so then I start talking to it. I'm like, okay, thank you, for doing that. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I have my phone. Normally I'm just so entrenched with the goggles or other things that I don't think about getting my phone out. And so since I had the phone with the Constellation app, I'm like, oh, I'm going to try to take pictures of it and video. Well, what my eyes were seeing was very different than what the camera was picking up, which is pretty common. And at the time, I was trying to call my husband to come out to see it, but he wasn't picking up. And so I'm like, okay, it's just me and you. And so finally I got to a point where I needed to go in the house. And so I thank it for being there. And I always thank them for showing themselves to me and to my guests. So I go in the house and I look through the pictures and the video and I realized, oh, okay, I got better stuff than what I thought. So it actually had real structure to it when I zoomed in and the video. So the video shows a pulsing, but also a spinning thing happening with it. And so I think what it is like a Merkaba that's counterclockwise twisting, creating a craft. And when I was in my spiritual school of enlightenment, we were learning how to do that kind of thing. And it really is a thing. Like you can turn your body into a spacecraft, essentially. And some of these craft, that is energetically what they are. So it could be an individual, but it could be a certain craft that does this as well. And I have since seen other people's photos and videos of exactly the same thing. Even NASA has a video that was taken from one of the space stations that these craft were caught on camera. So many of them around this one camera looking exactly like this thing.
Wow. We actually talked about that. What was it? Was it season 2, John? We were talking about sacred geometry and how that was is it Merkaba? How that if you can actually, like, it's not just a symbol, it's not just symbolism or geometric shape, but there is the meditation that people try to get themselves to so that they can turn themselves into that, using that connection with their body, like you said, to interdimension kind of travel. I'm sounding way more awkward with it, but I remember the visualization because we read so much about these and it was really neat. And when you said that you saw that, it's like, oh my gosh, that's the thing.
Yeah. Well, and okay, so here's the other really cool thing is that the very next morning, so that was like at 8 p.m. on March 7th, the very next morning on March 8th, people started driving to work about 5:30 in the morning. And they started seeing all of these spaceship clouds all over our island. And these clouds, so we have high trade winds where clouds are blowing through, all day long. Okay, these clouds stayed on the island from 5:30 a.m. till 10:30 p.m., not moving. All the other clouds were moving. These did not move. And people were taking pictures. It was all over social media. People who live on the island who come on my tours, oh my God, I remember that day, because it was just so unusual of seeing that. And that day is when I was teaching about the Pleiadians. And I've heard other people talk about this kind of craft actually as a Pleiadian craft. So it was like it was showing there, and then they came in the clouds, and then I'm channeling the Pleiadians. And yeah, I've got friends that were texting me, did you see those Pleiadian ships? And I'm like, yeah.
So there really was like a whole lot of synchronicity going on in that time. Do you find that the more you're channeling these different races, the more synchronicities are occurring for you?
Yes, the more, so I've been doing the tours for 2 years now. And the more that I'm sharing, that I'm writing, that I'm channeling, like the activity is off the charts, just totally off the charts.
How does that affect? Like, do you ever just say, I need a pause from this? Or is this like, this is just who I am and this is my journey?
So that's a really great question because a couple months ago I went through a really traumatic thing with my family, and I took I took a few weeks off from working in that realm or any realm whatsoever. But when I started doing it again, like really getting to share about these and seeing them, it brings me so much joy that it's like this is what fills me up. And so it's who I am, and I'm totally fine with that. And so the more that I can stay in that state of joy, then I'm going to keep doing it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As much as we all have our different paths, and when we connect to that, this is my path, this is my journey, it can all feel like boom, 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 synchronicities and energy alignment. And sometimes that can be overwhelming for some people. And it's really easy to be like, take it back. I take it back. I don't want it. So it is motivating and inspiring to see people that are like, yeah, it can be a little wow, but keep going. It's worth it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just, you know, I feel very grateful that I actually get to share my true authentic self without the judgment that I used to feel, especially back in Washington State where I'm from. If I was still back there and talking about this stuff, there's my old group of people, my old world, I think would think that I was absolutely bonkers and, probably need medication or something. And so I moving to Hawaii was one of the best things I could have done because I can just really be who I am, and I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay. And I'm here. The more that I am authentic, it lets other people around me show their full authentic selves as well.
Well, it's like you said earlier, that the vibration that we're at is what we're going to be met with. And so by being your authentic self, it's drawing in, even if the people aren't necessarily living it loudly, they're ready to be at that. And so
Yeah,
that connects and draws in.
yeah, it really does. And when you are who you are, then people will naturally gravitate towards you. It's like a magnet. So you will meet your people, even if you feel very alienated in a way. You, the more that you are who you are, yeah, your people will come.
Kind of like at the convention.
Yes, exactly. It was such a beautiful. I've been to a lot of spiritual conferences in my life, and I wasn't sure what to expect with this one compared to those. And what I loved, number one, about um, everyone there was there wasn't as much ego involved. I think because people are so used to being kind of fringe that they're like, okay, okay, these are my group of weirdos, so we can just be weird together and everyone's accepting, where it's not like I'm better than you because I might know more than you. It was definitely much more collaborative, I would say, in nature.
I really love that. So with these events, because you said there's more, there's the one in Sedona in March and there's more, do you find that that world is continuing to be accepted and
Hmm.
normalized? So you see that it's going to get bigger?
I do. And I've seen that even again with the tours, because when we first started the tours, it was before we had the major whistleblowers coming out with the government. And so we had, people that were like, oh, we still don't believe. But now we're getting, because of the whistleblowers, and the Pentagon is saying, okay, yes, even though they want us to perceive it as a threat, or they are saying we have to perceive it as a threat from a military perspective. even with that, people are embracing the concept more and more. And so it is actually becoming more normalized. And now there are still people who, no matter, even with the government and these whistleblowers coming out, they're like, there's no way because, the technology, they can't get here. They live too far away. And I'm like, do you know how much more advanced they are? They have different physics. Like what we are primitive here on Earth.
We're the primitive ones. Well, they have to, and that's the thing we've talked about before, that if, and most of us believe this is not an if, there are beings out there outside of us, which this universe is old. So we are likely not the only ones out there that their technology is much further along than ours in a way we can't fathom. Oftentimes we can only fathom the world through a lens of what we know, what we already know, and what we've learned up until that point. So the idea that like, well, we have cars and airplanes, and so that must be all they have. And it's like, no, I don't think that's how it works.
Exactly. And so, yeah, for people like that, I mean, they can believe whatever they want. And I always say, I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I'm just here to share information and you can take it or leave it.
Right. You can't make people believe what they're not ready for. So,
correct. No.
Just like you can't force people to go on spiritual journeys, they have to be ready for it, and that's their path. You were mentioning how when you were driving and you were asking, like, please just show me that. It reminded me, it's so random, but it reminded me of that article that came out recently about Goldie Hawn. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah, where she's just like, I really want to experience an alien. I want to. And I feel like that determination and in the way you were saying it, that energy feels the same of like, it's not just, boy, I'd really like to see that, but there was a definitive energy manifesting that she had spoken about. And then she talked about it was all love. All I felt was love and surrounded by love, a love I couldn't even define. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right.
It is. And yeah, every time that I have, worked with clients to help them be the bridge to meet their galactic family and guides, the kind of love that they feel, it's so different than our Earth love because it really is unconditional. It is, all encompassing. And so, yeah, the love is real.
The love is real. I love that. That just needs to be the title. The love is real. So you mentioned that the hybrids were going to eventually be here. What would be the purpose of that, of putting them here?
Well, they're living on spaceships and need a home.
There is that.
And they are part of us. And so, really the timeline on that really depends on us as humanity of getting over our judgment of what other people look like. People are still judging people based on their skin color or like, oh, you're transitioning into a different gender or whatever. It's like, get over your judgment and allow this beautiful diversity of life that's out there. Anyway, so we need to shift that perspective a little more to be more embracing of, others that are different than us. But really, ultimately they want and need a home planet, and Earth already is in a higher vibration for them to live among Earth, So we just need to get more humans into that fifth dimensional reality.
Just need to all vibrate a little higher, which I feel like there was that massive shift between 2019 and 2022 where a lot of people started to try and find that higher vibration. So I'm hoping as we kind of go back out into the world, we don't lose that progress towards that higher vibration and that search for it. Because how many people, once they had to stop, right? Once they had to just stop and be alone, started feeling that sense of, oh man, there's something more. And so I really hope now that, we're going back to that out in the world and in that fast, go, that we don't lose that drive to find that higher vibration.
Yeah. Well, and, again, some people will stay on that path. Others will go revert back.
Yeah.
And again, there is no right or wrong in that. And so whoever is meant to be on the path is in the perfect timing already. It's already done. So you're on the path now or later.
No, Lisa, you're wrong. No, I'm just kidding. You're right. And I did like what you said, that when we start learning to stop judging ourselves, we can start to really stop judging others, because it really is internal. As you were saying, that internal work has to come first.
Yes. And working through all of the shadows, that is actually when we stop turning things into a fear-based thing, the scary external things, because nothing is actually scary. Nothing has to be scary.
That's so awesome. I feel like my brain's constantly, just after I talk to you, like even when I am talking to you, it starts just going like it's a Merkaba. It turns into. So holding on to that so I can keep digesting all of this. Now, you've got a lot of messages that come through. I mean, 13 different races, I imagine. No, that is a question I have. So when you're channeling the 13 races, John laughs at me because my mind just jumps. When you're channeling any of the individual races, is it coming through as a message from their collective, or is there like a representative or an ambassador that you connect to?
It's different for the different groups depending on what dimensional reality they're residing at.
Okay.
And so, even though, like with the Arcturians, even though the one that mainly I'm channeling is Arcturian Uluru, but it's actually a collective at that higher level. It just happens to be that when I first met them, the one that was the front spokesperson for the group gave me the name Uluru. And then only last year did I realize, oh, that is me. I am Uluru. And I'm speaking basically a voice of the collective, if that makes sense.
So, for those that maybe haven't listened to your previous episode with us, by the way, I highly recommend listeners, if you haven't listened to Lisa's episode on season 3, please do. It's an amazing conversation, just like this one. For those, though, that haven't and are getting the pleasure of meeting you on this episode, what's the name of your podcast? Because I'm sure they'd love to go in to learn more, and I'm sure you go into these topics more in depth on your podcast.
Yeah. So it is Connection to the Cosmos with Dr. Lisa Thompson. And I have a YouTube channel, and then I'm on the podcast outlets, the various podcast outlets.
And of course, on your website, you have all sorts of amazing things. Not only do you have your books, which I encourage people, if you'd like a signed copy, go to her website. If you want it faster because you need it now, Amazon. But you also have oracle decks, right?
Yeah, I do. So I just this year created the 9th deck over the last 4 years. I have just been, yeah. So I've been busy.
You're amazing.
And the newest Oracle deck that came out is actually, it can be used as a companion or a standalone from the new book. It's called Wisdom of the Galactics. And each of the cards, the write-up of it, is part of the channeled messages. So it's 13 races, 4 cards per race with whatever wisdom they brought through, different themes.
Yeah, all of your Oracle decks have just beautiful artwork on them. But I will say the one that stands out to me the most is the artwork of the Connection to the Cosmos deck.
Okay. Yes, I love that. That was last year's deck that came out with Connection to the Cosmos book. So I seem to, whenever I write a book, I get inspired to create a deck to go with it. So from my interior design spiritual days, I've got, the book and the cards, and my Sacred Soul Love Healing Myself book. I've got cards for that. And then, I'm a former marine biologist and zoologist. So I've got animals and birds and marine animals.
What I love is not only do your books reflect your phase in your journey, how these are helping you in your evolution, but it's also helping others. It's really
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you. But I'm already working on my newest book, which is so I guess I will share this with the audience because the book will be coming out, probably sooner than later. So 2 months ago, my husband committed suicide, and he's already processed. He's already in the place of joy. And when he came through 3 different mediums over the last couple months, they all had very similar messages where he wants to write books with me from the other side. I know. So, and so that's going to be a new thing in addition to the galactic stuff. And we'll see how that unfolds.
How does, out of curiosity, how would that work? Would the books you write together, would that be something that you start to channel, or would you use a medium to help you with that?
I think what he wants to do is actually channel through me,
Wow.
like my ETs do.
Which is interesting because you channel all the different ET races, but have you ever channeled like spirits?
No, I haven't. So, yeah. So again, but once you are a channel and whatever it is you're going to be channeling is of a higher vibration, like I would never actively choose to channel anything of a lower vibration. Some people do, and that's fine for them, but that's not what I want to do. So now knowing where, like my husband's energy, where he is, it's going to be a really interesting thing to experience and see how it works.
You're just leveling up, like year after year after year. I feel like we're gonna need to catch up at least minimally annually, just so we could see, like, holy moly, your journey is amazing.
Yeah, thank you. So,
and I am, with that said, though, I am very sorry for your loss. That is heartbreaking, and that is not something that I'm like, oh yeah, your journey leveling up. That is heartbreaking. I do find it inspiring that you're finding a way to emerge through that, like you said, as a phoenix, to find what that purpose is. What's the next step? So that's really empowering.
well, and one thing that I'm feeling really called, why I wanted to share that, is that we get, and the ETs say this too, we get so hung up on this human costume. A lot of people think this is it. This is not it. We are energy. Our soul doesn't die. We just change form, and we have different costumes that we're putting on. And so, for him being in physical body, he didn't feel like he could do as much as now. From the other side, he's able to do so much more from that higher perspective. And so for anyone, listening that maybe has gone through that kind of thing where a loved one dies, their energy is still always there, and you can always tune into it. You can always connect with it. For some people, it's easier to do it through a medium, but you have the ability when you've healed a little bit more, when you're deep in the grief, there's kind of like a blanket around you, I've discovered. And so as the blanket kind of dissipates, then you have the ability to communicate.
And I know, you do past life regression, and we've talked about past lives before. So with him being on this joyous, in this joyous state, and on the other side, is a part of his soul continuing on in the next life journey, while the part that is connected to you is still working on this aspect. Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, and we are all multidimensional, as I mentioned earlier. And so we have multiple lives going on simultaneously. And so, yeah, so a loved one who has passed, their energy can be here with us. At the same time, they could be fully incarnated as a different, aspect, whether it's human or something non-human.
I'll be honest, I love the idea of that. I don't remember which guest we were talking to about that, but it was this idea that, like, we our conscious is like fragmented into different lifetimes that are simultaneously occurring, and that we never access the full thing all at once because it would just be overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so all I could think about is like, yeah, if I experienced all my lifetimes all at the same time, my head would probably explode. So, but there is a comfort in that, right? There's a comfort in knowing that this is not finite. And
Yeah.
there is more, because I think we feel that in our core. There's a truth inside of us that feels, all of us feel in some capacity, that there is more. So,
Yeah. And, all of, again, whether it's angels or higher dimensional beings or past loved ones or spirit guides, like they all have these beautiful messages to share that we can tap into and that we can understand. Yeah, there is way more than just this one human life.
I love that so much. Do we have any final thoughts before we start to wrap up? I feel like I never want the conversation to end when I'm talking to you, but I also don't want to keep you hostage. What did you call it? A temporary detainment for too long.
I guess the more that you are coming from a place of love in your life, the more that you're going to experience that. And the more that you are asking to have experiences from the ET realm, like I did when I was asked, I really just show me a sign you're there. The more that you're open to it and coming from a heart place, the more likely you are to have an interaction or a sighting or an experience. And a lot of you are already having those again in the astral state, in the dream state. You just don't remember it.
Is there something, I'm going to backtrack just a quick moment. Is there something you do when you're channeling that you prepare to help you prepare yourself to make sure you are on the vibration that brings in the higher vibration beings?
Yeah. So it took a little practice at first. Now I can go into it much faster. But for me, running source white light energy through my body and really then consciously thinking about my cells vibrating faster and faster. And I have a whole meditative journey in the new book of how to raise your vibration. And so really running that white light, clearing out any of maybe emotions that I might be feeling, really allowing my ego to step to the side so that I'm not interfering with the messages or trying to control what's going to come through me. But that for me, that white light energy, that very quickly gets me into at that higher vibrational state.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I was just curious. I meant to ask that earlier, and I forgot to. So I know. I was like, final thoughts. Wait, I have more questions.
Yeah, well, and one thing that I did experience one night, I had been drinking some wine a couple years ago, and something that wasn't of a necessarily higher vibration was talking through me, and my daughter was like, "Oh my God, never do that again." And so, yeah, so any kind of, substance that's going to lower the vibration, you don't do it. And don't do it and channel. Yeah.
The same thing with doing paranormal investigating. Don't get drunk, don't get high beforehand, because you don't know what you're going to bring in. I mean, you don't know what you're going to bring in anyway, but like the chances are even greater of bringing something,
Yeah.
not wanted when you're under the influence, for sure.
Right. Right. Because the veils are down. So you don't have the same kind of, barrier that you do when you're lucid.
Yeah, we've had quite a few different guests from different backgrounds, whether they're channelers, they're mediums, people going into Akashic records, anything like that. They all have said similar things, like we don't go under the influence because that automatically lowers your vibration. So whether you're trying to channel extraterrestrials or spirits, it's all similar. Make sure your vibration is high so that you're bringing in high vibration responses.
Yes, vibration high, you not so much.
Well, Lisa, goodness, I thank you so much for coming on to talk to us. This time for me flew by so quickly. I appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you as always. And I'm happy to come on whenever. And yeah, we'll see what happens next year or like over the next year and maybe next November.
I plan to have you on before that, by the
Yes.
way. I feel like
Good for
November
you,
was too long,
yes.
especially because there's a March in between there that we need to be a part of.
Oh, wow.
Well, there is a March, and I'm going to Egypt in
Oh.
April.
Oh my
So I'll have a lot
gosh.
to share about that too. Yeah.
Even that, I'm going to have so many questions for you, like I always do. So, one more time, Lisa, where can people find you?
So my website is drlisajthompson.com. I also have BigIslandUFOtours.com. And Facebook is my main social media platform. So you can find me, Dr. Lisa Thompson or just Lisa Thompson. And then Connection to the Cosmos with Dr. Lisa Thompson on YouTube or the podcast outlets.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much. Always, always, always happy to talk to you.
Thank you.
All right, John Thomas.
All right. Again, Lisa, thank you. You always open my mind to all kinds of amazing things. And just because I don't talk a lot doesn't mean I don't have questions. Ashley's usually pretty good at asking the same things that I'm thinking, so I like it. She's just faster. And thank you to everybody for listening to this episode of 3Haunted Podcast with your host. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And if you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please feel free to email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, you better like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss another amazing guest like Lisa Thompson.
Until next time.